What's up, YouTube people? It's your boy Active Gamer here. I am looking over the new banned and restricted list that just dropped today, August 3rd, and I wanted to give my take on it and my feelings on the bans that they presented us. Um, so I'm looking over here, and we have Wilderness Reclamation, but I have the list up here for everybody to see who might not have seen it yet. So in Standard, they banned Wilderness Reclamation, Growth Spiral, Teferi Time Raveler, and Cauldron Familiar. I read over the long article. If you want to read through the article, you can. They give you a whole breakdown of why they did what they did in each section. But for right now, we're just going to kind of stick with what we have over here and just like talk about the cards themselves. So Wilderness Reclamation has been a problematic card in Standard and has kind of seeped into the Modern and Pioneer formats as well. They kind of figured it out with Fires of Invention. When you can either double spell or double your mana in a single turn to play higher power level spells, turn sooner. In the case of Wilderness Reclamation, you can play powerful spells 6 turns earlier, depending on how your start went. If you have 5 lands in play, then you have 10 mana on turn 5. 10 mana on turn 6. It's just insane. It's just a crazy power boost. And decks that really benefited from this and kind of broke this or used it to its best of ability was cards like Expansion Explosion, Nexus of Fate, things that you can play at instant speed, and use that extra mana on your end step with the trigger on the stack. You tap the mana, untap, and then tap, play your spell. So people who have used this card, I played in the Players Tour with this deck, Team of Reclamation. It has been one of the top decks in the format for some time now, putting 4 copies in the top 8 of almost every tournament. In modern tournaments, they're showing up, making the top 8. So I really think it was time for this card to be gone. I thought they were going to do it last banned and restricted list, but they didn't do that, and I was very upset because you're abusing the power of this card, and it's crazy. So I'm glad that it's gone, honestly. Next up on the docket is Growth Spiral. There's just like no downside to this card. Like, Explore is a proper way to use this ability. It's 1 in a green. It's a sorcery speed. You put a land into play and draw a card. So the crazy thing about this is that you can leave mana open for counter spells, and then if your opponent doesn't do something that you feel worthy of countering, you can just bam, ramp yourself. Or you always have a 2 mana ramp spell. It just allows for such busted draws, and it replaces itself, so you don't lose out on a card. So you get velocity, and in decks like Wilderness Reclamation, this card really propelled you forward. So I think the card's design was a little. I remember when I first saw Growth Spiral, I was like, "What the hell is this? Isn't this just Explore but better, like on steroids?" Card's insane. That being said, I'm glad that it's out. Green. I love green, and Simic has been just so powerful. It's just been honestly one of the most powerful decks in Standard. It's been pretty much oppressing Standard for a while, since the days of Oko, and that's a whole nother story. But thankfully, Growth Spiral is now out of the situation. Teferi Time Raveler. This one hit me a little. Like, I know rotation's coming soon, so this card would have rotated. But it's one of those weird things. Like, I really wish they would have did this a long time ago. Like, this invalidated so many strategies. Like, I personally wouldn't be, what's the word I'm looking for? I wouldn't be, not discouraged, but I wouldn't be surprised if Simic Flash makes a hard return. Like, Teferi Time Raveler was the main reason why Simic Flash could not exist. Anytime if someone ever resolved a Teferi, it bounced your biggest creature, your wolf, and then you were just your whole deck. You have no tempo. They get to do their most busted thing, which is always better than you because your smaller parts, your Brineborn Cutthroats, your Mystical Dispute, your Essence Scatters, your Quenches, they're just not hitting like they were before when you didn't have the Teferi. Also, there's been so many times in games where the static text, like Planeswalkers with static text, I hate. I genuinely dislike that. There's 2 cards, Narset and Teferi. I wouldn't have been mad if they hit both of them. Narset, I think, has a higher mana cost. Not mana cost. Is a little bit harder on your mana. So it's the same mana cost. It's 1 blue, but it's a little bit harder on your mana. Sometimes you can't cast it on curve. And it doesn't have an uptick. It only has a downtick. So if people who might not know what that is, it doesn't have a plus ability. Just has Narset just has a minus ability. But Teferi's, like I said, to stay on the static text. So Teferi's static text said, players can only play spells anytime they can play sorceries. So that means it's putting your magic at sorcery speed. You can't be very interactive. But there was slight nuances and things that it just hit randomly that ruined a lot of decks. Like in Mono Red. It's not the best card, but there was many times where I'm like, alright, I'm going to attack in. If they play a Shark Typhoon, I'm going to Rimrock Knight my creature, and I'll make a trade. Well, guess what happened? I forgot that, you can't do things at instant speed, and I feel like it left a lot of people with the feel bad moments, like they lost games because they just forgot for a second that they knew Teferi was there, and they even were attacking the Teferi. They just forgot its static text. And that's a big hit. So I mean, about time. Everyone's been calling for 3-mana Teferi to be out of the format. And I'm glad they did. It makes the format a little bit crazier. There Uro still exists. Uro still is, in my opinion, the best card in Standard, and will always be the best card in Standard. So that's just a big hit. So that's it for Teferi. Next on the list, Cauldron Familiar. Now Cauldron Familiar, that card has just been annoying. It teetered on like this is too powerful, and like this is just an annoyance to play against. Like I don't have fun playing against somebody who's sack a cat, sack of food, bring back a cat, sack the cat, sack of food, and you're just like okay, like. And you get death by 1,000 cats, you're just getting pinged. You're losing 1 life, they're gaining 1 life, and you think that you have the game won, but then you're like, they're staying alive, and the next thing you know, you're not winning the game anymore. I'm glad that they banned Cauldron Familiar, but I don't know. I don't know if I would have rather them ban Cauldron Familiar or ban Witch's Oven. I think Witch's Oven is more practical, because you do have to have, like, the cat itself doesn't do much, so I don't think people would have played it, but the oven does a lot for multiple decks, so maybe that's why they just wanted another sack outlet. It's something that's not so engine-y, but cat's out. Cat should have been out months ago, but they just went hard. They said, they're like, yeah, we're just banning things, like we're taking a new approach, it's an experiment. So they were transparent, and I really like how they were the transparency of the ban team. They weren't just like, oh well, we think this is gonna be a good, like, nah, all these things are problems, let's ban it, let's see what happens. So that's it for Standard. Now Pioneer, they even went harder in Pioneer than they did on Standard. So you have Inverter of Truce here. I don't know if you can see the card, but the Inverter of Truce deck was a Dimir control / combo deck with this card, Inverter of Truth. This says when it enters the battlefield, exile all cards from your library face down, then shuffle all cards from your graveyard into your library. You would pair this card with another card called Thassa's Oracle, which stated when Thassa's Oracle enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards, where X is your devotion to blue. If X is greater than the number of cards in your deck, you win the game. So you would use cards like delve cards, ways to control your graveyard, and then when you had 1 or 2 cards in your library, you would play Thassa's Oracle, win the game. But sometimes you would just get all your best spells in your graveyard. You'll exile your graveyard, and you get to use the same spells that you had. You know, your Fatal Pushes, your Thought Seizes. You get to play your like creatures again. And you know you're drawing heat every turn, so you put the game in a position where you're like, all right, I want to draw these X spells, and this is what I need. So you have your Inverter Truth, and sometimes Inverter just beat you down. Sometimes you'd put like 20 cards in your graveyard, you play an Inverter Truth, you have 20 cards in your library, and you just attack somebody. You just beat them down with a 6/6 flyer. Card was busted. Kethis, same thing. Combo deck. What you would end up doing was looping a card called Mox Amber, generating mana, eventually milling yourself out to 0 cards, and then you would either play Thassa's Oracle from your hand, or you play Jace. I think it's Wielder of Mysteries. Pretty much what Jace's ability is: 1 blue, blue, blue. If at any time you had no cards left in your library and you were to draw a card, you win the game. So pretty much his target player puts the top X cards from their library. The top 2 cards from their library in the graveyard, draw a card. So you'd mill your deck with the Kethis, looping Mox Amber, and then boom, you win the game. It's a little bit more drawn out than that. So the cards you need are there. It's a little bit more to it, but for the gist of it, that was the basic one. If you want to find anything out about the Kethis combo, just YouTube, look up videos about the Kethis combo. You'll see it. You'll see the salt that it provides. They banned Walking Ballista because of Helioid Sun's Crown, which is dope. They're pretty much just like anything that's a combo that they're like, okay, you combo this, all right, it's banned. So the Walking Ballista Helioid Sun's Crown combo was a new card from Theros Beyond Death. It was the White God. What his ability said: target creature gains a lifelink. Whenever a creature with lifelink deals damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. So what you do with Walking Ballista, you make it a 2/2. You give it lifelink with Helioid, or Heliod, I think it is, and then ping somebody for 1. He gets counter, infinite damage. So pretty much just like any white-green creature deck. You see it in like Devoted Devastation, things like that. Underworld Breach, that one's a nuts. That combo is crazy. What you're trying to do is, Underworld Breach's text says, until the end of the turn, each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost, plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. So with this combo, what you would do is you would once again mill your whole deck, and you would either win with Thassa's Oracle, or you would mill your opponent's deck out, and then you'd pass the turn. They would draw a card. They would lose the game. It's just one of those situations where it's like these decks were fast, and you didn't have a lot of. They were very resilient to interaction. Like the Inverter Truth deck, it wasn't so much like they were trying just to get you with the combo. They could play a normal control match where they countered spells of yours, killed your creatures, controlled the board state, just played an inverter, attacked you, and killed you. They beat you with card advantage. They would just straight up mill you out. They would mill themselves and win the game with Jace. There was a lot of situations that, and then when you kind of overextended, they're like, inverter flip, Thassa, 6 mana, and this is 6 mana, so it's not even, it's a 4/4, it's a 4 mana card and a 2 mana card, and a 2 mana card, so bam, 6 mana, win the game. So Kethis, same thing. It was a little convoluted how you get there, but for the most part, all the creatures were cheap. It was very efficient at doing what it does. It hit all its key permanents. Everything had a lot of redundancy. You could get back everything that went to your graveyard was almost like it was in your hand for half the time. So, it seemed harder than it was, but it was so efficient. Walking Ballista, the Sun Crown combo, that was just a 2 card combo. I feel like 2 card combos should never exist. You know, where someone could just tap out and I'm just like, creature X, you're dead. Thank you. Have a good day. Underworld Breach was just too fast. That's from my understanding. It just did its thing consistently too many times, faster than you could get answers, and then you'd have to mulligan. It was tough on your mulligan decisions. It was hard to beat game one, and it was resilient to graveyard hate, things of that nature. It just had so many game plans. So there's weird situations that you could do. Um, Historic is open in the air. I'm just glad they just straight went for it. Said no more Wilderness Rack, no more Teferi Time Raveler. It's weird because I don't know. Historic has a lot of powerful cards. Like there's Maxis, the goblin who puts 6 goblins potentially into play. Usually, if someone hits like 3 goblins off that, you lost the game. So I mean, they could have went a little step further and just like nerfed that deck slightly. I feel like you can't play any other aggro deck. Like you just actually can't play another aggro deck but the Goblins one. And what kept that deck kind of down was Wilderness Reclamation, because you could instant speed magma quake people. You know, so like 6 damage before they attacked, sweep their whole board, and they spend a whole turn, you know, sacrificing goblins with Skirk Prospector and trying to combo off. So it hurts. I don't know how that format's going to shake up, and that might have been a bad idea. Maybe they should nerf the goblins deck slightly. But overall, honestly, my honest opinion on this, I think it was necessary. I wish they would have done it sooner. I really like how they did everything, how everything was handled. They were transparent. It was abrupt, and it gave no one any time to prepare. And I really feel bad for people who've been testing for tournaments and stuff. I haven't even checked the Twitter sphere yet to see how things are going. But overall, I think it was time for these cards to leave the format. I think it was time for Wizards of the Coast to understand, and the design teams to take a step back and say, hey, we made some real serious mistakes in 2019. We need to just fix it now and give these people the best play experience they can have. So like, you know, you don't want to let like, no one has hype for a new set when you're just got the same taste in your mouth from getting explosioned for 26. You know, like your whole game plan doesn't matter because it's invalidated by Teferi. Like, no matter what you do, you're gonna get hit with 25 damage over 30 minutes by a Cauldron Familiar, and you can't target it, you can't kill it. You need to bring in artifact removal, but it doesn't stop the 1/1, so you're just wasting slot. Like, it just made so many problems. And for Pioneer, I think it just breathed life into the format. After companion bans, it was shifted so hard with companions. Then when it came back, it's like, this is just bland. Like, I don't want to keep playing these same decks, you know. So I'm glad to see where it is. They banned Teferi and Brawl. I'm never gonna ever play Brawl. Like, realistically, I don't. No, thank you. Yeah. So my final thoughts: it was time. They needed to do it. Thank you, Wizards. I'm glad you did it now. Thank you for being transparent. And to everybody who's watching, who took the time to watch this video, thank you very much. If you like it, please like, follow, and subscribe. And check me out on all my social media platforms, ActiveGamer_fit or ActiveGamer_fitness. And I'll catch you guys later. Peace.